Mm.
You see? So, for these things to have happened, it was because of ETA. So I don't foresee strategically it works because you are also nandaba abangenela kwa-ETA. Oqala ukuthi hayi mani niyababona kodala basithi kahle kahle thina besingenza ukuthi lo la kule
Честно, ты сможешь. Time of empowerment and uplifting of your faith like never before. I want to be like captured live on fantastic.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Good
Good afternoon.
afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, colleagues.
Yeah. So I think we're ready to start. Firstly, thank you for making time to join this webinar. This is our first webinar, with the second webinar taking place next week Thursday. If we can just ask those of you who are in attendance, please can you turn off your mics and your cameras? So my name is Bakele Siakeng. I'm with the Department of Mining and Energy. With me, I have colleagues from the IDC as well as the Council for Geoscience who are online. The purpose of today is to go through the Junior Mining Exploration Fund, and I think importantly to provide clarity, to respond to your questions with regards to window which opened on the 3rd of June. On my screen, I have the agenda, which we'll go through. We'll begin with the background, see Restoration Fund, sort of the thinking behind it. We'll go through the call, the process for application forms, the minerals which we're funding. We'll then go to the competitive features. So how do you make your application sort of stand out and be selected? We'll discuss sort of the various application points. We'll take you through the evaluation process, and lastly, we'll take your questions. Please do drop your questions in the chat. We'll answer those questions, and then we'll respond to them at the end of the session. Very briefly, the IDC has partnered with the department as well as the Council for Geoscience to establish this JMEF, the Junior Mining Exploration Fund. The fund size is 400 million, but for this particular call, which is our first funding call, we'll be looking at utilizing 160 million of the fund. The DMRE and the IDC are both equal partners in the fund, and we will also be leveraging the Council for Geosciences expertise in terms of the understanding of geology, and they also play a very important part in identifying which areas, which minerals we are to fund. So it fits quite well into the IDC's mandate of development of industrial capacity. Why the fund? I think there is a recognition that South Africa has fallen behind in terms of attracting exploration expenditure. If you compare us to other mining jurisdictions like your Canada and Australia, we attract quite a small portion of exploration. So through this fund, we're hoping to demonstrate that South Africa is a very attractive location for exploration. It's a proof of concept. And I think as we go along and start to discover these minerals and these projects, we'll be able to crowd in more investment into the fund. I think the key point here is that it's a proof of concept. So it's quite important for us as DMRE, CGS, IDC to really select projects with the highest possibility of success. And we know that sort of exploration is high risk. The fund is relatively small as well. We are going to be quite stringent in terms of how we assess those applications. The fund is also an intervention which was identified in the DMRE's exploration implementation plan, which was launched in April 2022. So this is one of our interventions to try and revitalize exploration in the country. I did mention that the fund's current size is 100 million, but again, we do hope to grow the fund as we move along. So it's important to demonstrate that success. IDC will be managing the fund. I think importantly, it is non-repayable grants. And what do we mean by that? We're saying that at the stage of investment, we won't be a loan. It'll be a grant. But if the project discovers an ore body, the fund will have an option of converting that grant into equity. That conversion rate will be on a case-by-case basis, but it's really to ensure that the fund is sustainable. At no point will we take more than 50% of equity. It will just be for us to ensure that there is some reinvestment back into the fund to ensure that it's sustainable. I think importantly as well, there is a minimum and a maximum amount. So if you apply for below 5 million or above 45 million, then you won't be eligible for the fund. So I think something that people should also keep in mind to stick within those parameters which we've set. The IDC will also have right of first refusal for follow-on funding, and that's as you move into the feasibility stage of the project. There are no fees charged to the grant recipient. So again, if we fund you and there isn't any ore body discovered, there won't be any fees or any cost to the applicant. However, if there is an ore body, then there will be a conversion to equity, and that will be discussed at the stage of granting the fund. Next slide. So we invite applications from junior miners that are more than 50% Black owned. It must be an SA registered entity. So I know we have received a few questions via email regarding funding projects outside of South Africa. We don't fund any projects outside of our borders. It's only for your question. It's only for projects within South Africa. So if you have a copper project in Zambia, you wouldn't be eligible for this particular fund. Should be in possession of a prospecting right. Is a small error there. So if you have a mining right or mining permit, you won't be eligible. So I think importantly here, I think that's an mistake on our part. It's only for valid prospecting rights. We don't fund mining rights or mining permits. We fund early stage exploration, so whether it's greenfield or brownfield. Again, it should be in South Africa. Potential for the project must be a mine life of more than 5 years. It needs to be within the minerals which were identified by the Council for Geoscience, and those are copper, nickel, graphite, lithium, and rare earth elements. I think here just briefly around the definition of a junior miner. And for this fund, we have defined a junior miner as a company that's non-listed in SA. It must have a valid prospecting right, must be engaged in either greenfield or brownfield exploration. It must have a Black ownership of at least 51%. And lastly, the entity or any controlling shareholder not have revenue from other mining rights. Again, and I think I need to just stress this point, we are primarily assessing the geology. So we're assessing your prospecting works program. So to ensure that competitive, please have a look at your prospecting works program, enhance it where you can, because that's the key thing which we'll be looking at as to how viable is your project, how well thought out is the prospecting works program, and as well leveraging the Council for Geoscience. Is it within a location that is highly prospective for that particular mineral? We'll also be looking at the timeframes which you have on that prospective program, as well as the cost for those activities. So is it sensible? Is it value for money? Is it realistic? As well, the management team. So does the company have the requisite management team to execute on that venture? So also important that you share that experience and qualifications of so we're able to have comfort that you will be able to deliver on your prospecting works program. Lastly, transformation is quite important. I think we spoke about BE, but as well, women ownership, youth ownership are also important factors as we assess your projects. How to apply? If you look at that first bullet point, you can go to the IDC website. You will find on the website the application form, as well as the terms of reference. I highly encourage you guys to go through the few documents, take your time with them so you're able to understand what it is we are looking for. Complete the form and email it to the jmef@idc.co.za. Alternatively, you can come to the IDC head office in Sandton and deliver a copy. Those of you who may have a challenge with email access, you may visit our regional offices at the DMRE, but as well as at the IDC for assistance with submitting your application via email. But again, I do encourage everyone to email your applications. We're able to receive them quite easily. I think we've gone through the main documents, prospecting rights. Again, we don't fund mining permits or mining rights. Your documents, your CIPC documents, ID copies, proof of address, certificate, your well thought out exploration plan, your management team profiles, tax clearance, papaya consent form, as well as board resolution authorizing people acting on behalf of the applicant. And just on that last point, the lead applicant should be the permit holder. So that should be the lead applicant. However, on the application form, you'll see that if you do have someone who's going to be engaging with the IDC on your behalf, there is a section where you can indicate that, but the lead applicant is the permit holder. Right. Lastly, the evaluation process. There's 3 phases. The first phase will be shortlisting. They will be checking if your application is complete. So please do ensure you go through a checklist to make sure that everything we've asked for is provided. That's the first gate. Second gate will be a detailed due diligence by the Council for Geoscience, as well as the IDC, where we'll be looking at both your prospecting works program, but also other elements as well of your application, which will be assessed by the IDC. There will also be a site visit as well to your operation to ensure that we are quite thorough with our due diligence. Lastly, those who are then pre-selected will then be presented to an adjudication committee, which consists of both DMRE and IDC colleagues, and then that's where the final decision will be taken. In terms of timelines, I think because this is our first funding call, it is a bit hard to say for us to say how long it's going to take for us to assess. It will be dependent on the volume of applications which we do receive, but we are committed to being thorough and making sure that we are able to assess best deserving applications. Yeah, so I think that's in a nutshell the presentation. There is the website there at the bottom, or the email address where you can send through your applications as well as your questions with regards to the fund. So if you can just check if there's any questions on the Q&A, please drop your question in the Q&A, and then Billy will then highlight those. Then between myself, IDC, and Council for Geoscience will then provide you with a response. Thanks.
Yeah, I see there are people with their hands up. Please just put your questions in the chat. But Larry, the first question is, at what stage is the fund given? We currently have an acceptance letter from the DMRE of a prospecting right with potential metallic ores.
Thanks. So we'd have to have a granted prospecting right. So if you're still in the application process for a prospecting right, you would not be eligible for this funding. Like I said, it's only the first funding call. So I would encourage you to continue with that application process, and yeah, potentially the next funding call would have your granted prospecting right.
The question is, at what stage would they give the fund? So only once they've gone through the process, the due diligence, and then we're likely to pay suppliers directly, suppliers and service providers.
Yeah.
Okay, the next question, are we strictly limited to the above mentioned minerals? If so, how soon will there be another call for other lists of minerals?
So for the first funding call, we are only funding those minerals which we have stated. If you have a chrome project or coal project for this funding call, would not be eligible. And that's purely based on the fact that, we need to be pragmatic in our approach. We are trying to limit having too many applications that might not be manageable, but we're also informed by demand for the particular mineral. And I think as you have noticed, for our first funding call, we focused on what you would what is deemed as battery minerals or critical minerals. But the funding calls will differ. So I think in a nutshell, funding call 1 is based on only these particular minerals.
The question is, how soon will there be another funding call? Financial year.
Yeah, so it's again, I think at this stage, perhaps too soon to say. I think based on the lessons from this first funding call, will be better placed to advise as to when the next funding call will.
Then the next question, is it a once-off funding, or can one submit each and every year if the work is continuous over a longer duration?
The assumption here is that your application for funding will be for you to complete your application program to a CPR level. And so I think would only be for a application.
Yeah, but that process could go over more than 1 year.
Yeah.
What are the target minerals for the following 2 calls after the current funding call? We don't know
again,
yet.
too soon to say. I think the Council for Geoscience will advise us around which areas and which commodities would be of importance for the next funding call.
Do we need to also provide land use agreements for the first phase of the application?
Yes, we'd have to have comfort that we can access that land for exploration, for intrusive exploration.
Okay, the next one, we are new starters, so I assume a startup operation. We have prospecting rights, but don't have financial statements. I'll answer that. If it's an application from a startup or a new company entity, the financial statements aren't critical. So you can still submit your application. Will IDC consider other green minerals in the program? I think we've covered that, maybe in later funding calls. Our renewed prospecting right will expire at the end of this year. Can we still submit a funding application?
So I think the question there is, are you on your 3rd renewal? So I know that you, with your prospecting right, you have a period of 5 years. So I think the question then is, if we have to have at least a year left on your prospecting right for us to be able to assess your application and then approve that. So I think a year you should have at least a year left on your prospecting right.
What is the duration of the fund, considering that available funds is 400 million?
Duration of the fund.
Yeah, I think we said a total of 10 years in the initial.
Total of 10 years. And again, we do have intentions of going out into market and bringing more investments into this fund. So it won't be limited to this 100 million. I think as we go along, as we prove this concept, we'll be able to invite more private sector to invest into the fund. And hopefully in 3 years' time, when we sit here, we'll be talking about a 3 billion rand fund and not a 400 million rand fund.
Okay, here's another one. Do you fund B5 sand mining?
For this funding call now.
And then there's a few questions or few requests for the presentation to be shared. We'll put it on this chat. So you'll be able to get this presentation on the chat for this meeting. If our company is an MSME, do we need to submit a BBBEE certificate? Those are the exempt PE companies, if I'm not mistaken. Medium to small. If you have that affidavit, that should suffice. Okay, we don't have financial statements. We are starters, but we do have farm and prospecting rights. What can we do to get the funds for the exploration phase 1? We mentioned before, we don't necessarily need your financial statements, but we do need you to complete everything required on the website in terms of the application form and submit all those documents. Everybody's asking for the presentation. It will be uploaded onto the chat. We currently have tested for graphite in our prospecting, and the tests have confirmed, so we've been drilling to quantify. So we are interested in the fund to further explore the said ore bodies. So do you help with expertise, or do we only get funded and bring our own skill set? So the question is, they've drilled. So they're asking if we can help with expertise, or do they need to bring their own skill set?
Yeah, so I think because the Council for Geoscience is a partner to this fund, we'll be leveraging their expertise as well. So they can complement your existing expertise to sort of proceed with that exploration plan. And I think it's also quite positive as well that you have begun drilling, because the more data we have, the more able to assess the project. So I think you'll see on the form as well, we do ask for you to submit any previous studies, be it desktop, be it your aeromagnetic surveys, your drilling reports. So I think just to make your application more competitive, please do provide us with as much information as possible around that particular project.
I don't know if Asinia wants to come in on the advice thing.
Yeah.
Expertise. Asinia, are you here?
Thanks, Billy. We kind of covered it very well, so it's fine. We can carry on.
You? Do we need to provide any environmental authorization, including water use license at the first stage as well?
Yeah, so by virtue of you having your granted prospecting right, that means that you have undergone through the process of submitting your EMP. So no, there isn't a need for you to submit your water use license.
What about iron ore and manganese? Will this be part of the second call? Please, can you email? Okay, presentation. Again, we don't know what the minerals will be for the second call. So CGS will do a thorough, do their homework thoroughly and come up with the right minerals that we need as a country going forward. Will IDC consider my application if our company is not tax compliant? Unfortunately not. You're going to have to, we prohibit it by law. So please get your tax compliance in order before you apply. Is the VAT a must-have? Not at this stage, because I mean, if you don't have turnover yet, you don't have to register for VAT yet, so it's not necessary. But if you are VAT registered, get the details. Will IDC consider startup that applying for prospecting rights? The minerals mentioned above, like nickel, that is found in a protected area. I think it's again the question of if somebody's still in the process of acquiring the prospecting rights. Maybe you can just re-emphasize that.
Yeah, so again, I think you'd have to have a granted prospecting right. So if you're still in the application process, if you don't have access to the land, then we would not be able to fund you, because otherwise we'd find ourselves in a situation where we've approved you for funding, but we can't carry out the exploration program.
This question is, does IDC fund trucks and trailers for mining? That's not really the subject of this webinar. I mean, they're welcome to engage with IDC's mining SBU.
And I think if you go to the terms of reference, you'll see as a list of activities which we fund. So if you have a look at the terms of reference, it's on the website. You'll see the list of activities which we consider for funding.
I suppose the most common theme, again, a question about other minerals. At this stage, we really can't look at anything but those listed minerals. There's a question about iron ore and manganese, maybe in future funding calls, but at this stage, if you apply, your application is just going to be rejected. It can only be for those specific minerals that we've listed. Oops. Regarding the location, should we add the maps? Target minerals are listed on the PR. Should we relist on Word? Do we need to have VAT reference number? I think we've covered the VAT reference number question. Sina, maybe you can cover the question on the maps and the location.
Yeah, we did on the form that yes, they need to provide the location and the map if it's available. So yes, we do expect those details to be attached to the application.
What was the reason behind the current selected commodities? I don't think we have to go into that now. It was this work done by the CGS to identify what are the most critical and the most relevant minerals for this call. I don't know if you want to add to that, Asine.
Yeah, so thanks, Billy. As Abuhlali did kind of touch to it when he was going through the presentation. We looked at the demand locally and internationally, and we looked at the fact that some of these minerals are what is considered to be green minerals, or what is critical in terms of the future that we are heading towards. So yes, there's a whole lot of work which was done behind why these minerals were chosen. But yes, as it is right now, we don't have to get into those details. Thanks.
Does the funding cover refinery if we import minerals from other countries? Clearly not.
That wouldn't consider exploration. So no, we don't cover aspect.
Is it material if you have prospecting mining right, but the land is still under tribal authority? Tribal authority land ownership.
I think as long as you have access to the land and you can continue with the exploration and you can provide us with that consent from the landowners, it shouldn't be an issue that it's under our land.
We explore fluorspar. Does it fall in rare earth minerals? Sine?
No, really, it doesn't fall under the rare earth elements. Thanks.
Okay. And we've covered, there's a question about refineries and imports. We've covered it. Can you state all the minerals that we've covered in the presentation? I don't know if you want to just repeat the minerals again.
Yeah, so again, the minerals are copper, nickel, graphite, lithium, and rare elements.
Any reason why mining rights and permits are excluded?
The assumption there that you're not engaged in exploration. If you have a mining right, you are at a very advanced stage of your project. You're mining. So no. So this fund is specifically for exploration. There are other funds that exist within the IDC. I believe there's a fund that does mining. So you can look to those funds, but for this particular fund, we only look at prospecting rights.
In a case where the project is viable, in terms of partnerships, how does it work? Who are the parties my company will partner with to mining of the minerals up until the rehab of the project? Yeah, if I understand you correctly, we're not going to prescribe as the fund who you need to partner with. So if you can identify your service providers to help you with the entire process, getting on up to a competent person's report, we would, at the fund, in our due diligence, look at the service providers you're using, and we will do an evaluation of them. But we're not going to be prescriptive on in terms of what service providers you use. Hi everyone, I'm in the process of acquiring a license for precious metals. Precious metals, is it only limited listed resources? It's not covered by this call. It's basically in the process of acquiring a license for precious metals. And it says, is it only limited listed resources? I assume is it only the listed?
It's only those commodities which we stated.
Is a JV between the prospect license owner and the expertise allowed? By all means, as long as the holder of the prospecting license is the lead applicant under the fund. Kindly clarify stakeholder engagement, because this was done during consultation. Do you require evidence of that consultation?
So I think post the granting of the prospecting, right? If and this will only be at granting stage of the fund. So I think when you apply, we'll know that you have consulted. But once we get to when you're shortlisted, we may ask for an updated stakeholder engagement, just to ensure that when we do fund you, there aren't any disputes between yourself and the landowner. Because again, we don't want to sterilize the investment where we can't now access the land because there is disagreement between yourself and the landowner.
And if there's any update on your stakeholder engagement since you got the prospecting right up to now, please include it, then at least we're up to date. If you have a prospecting right for more than one of the qualifying minerals for the call, can you apply for both?
I
suppose they can apply for both. I don't know if I see anyone wants to come in, but I mean, it's still limited to the 45 million rand per recipient. So, Resine?
Yes, I was.
think your line is a bit better, Sine. But I think the answer is yes, you can apply for more than one mineral. But I believe the Natural Prospecting Works program should speak to that particular mineral and still be within the parameters of 5 and 45 million.
Okay, then seeing as the DMRE is part of this platform, we've had a situation where we waited 3 years for our PRs to be granted and are currently busy with the acquisition of a lithium right. My question is then, how will the department be assisting us in getting the applications concluded sooner?
Yeah, so I think there is work underway at the department to resolve the backlog with regards to those applications. And I think there's been quite a bit of progress made to date. But yeah, I think you would have to engage with the relevant regional office with regards to how can they assist with ensuring that they keep to their timelines with regards to your application. That would sit a bit outside of this fund's mandate. I think please do engage the regional office to assist you with those timelines.
On the subject of timelines, as soon as the application approved, if approved, we will start with immediately after the closing date of the call, which is the 12th of July. We will start with evaluating applications, and as soon as possible after that, for those who pass the first hurdle, start with due diligence process. It's hard to allocate timelines to it, but it's obviously in everybody's interest to get this done as quickly as possible. And that's why IDC was asked to manage the fund. We've got the expertise to manage these kind of funds, and with CGS's help to do the due diligences. So yeah, we can't really allocate timelines, but we want to move as quickly as possible. If you've got the consent of working on the land, but waiting for the prospective rights from DMR, will you consider my applications?
Again, you'd have to have a granted prospecting right. So if you're still in the process of application, you would not this particular round. Again, I'd say that, go through the process, obtain your granted PR, and then
again, when you're anticipating the second round, we can't really say yet. But which minerals we've covered, okay, is acknowledged that. How many applications can one company apply for? Should the company have more than one PR? I think we've just covered that. If it's more than one mineral, if you have more than one prospecting right, our limits are per applicant, but we can look at more than one application. That looks like it for now. Let me just check.
Yeah, but I think you can send through your questions to the email address. If you have any other questions that you need to have answered. This is our first webinar. There will be a second webinar next week, Thursday. So if during that time, after going through the application form and the terms of reference, you have other questions, you can send an email or ask your question at the next webinar.
Yeah, so there's another webinar a week from now. There's another question basically asking if there's some sort of funding similar to this for other minerals, not at this stage that we know of.
Yeah, so for exploration, no, but there is also a small scale mining fund at the DMRE. They fund mining permits, and they are mineral agnostic, so they fund all minerals. So I think also look out for that fund from the DMRE. And then I think there's also a question there around will the same criteria be applied for the second round? I think largely yes, but if there are lessons from this first round, we will adjust the criteria. So based on our lessons learned, we will use the criteria.
Absolutely. As Batlali mentioned, this is for us as well a bit of a learning curve. So any lessons learned will be applied going forward. Okay, it looks like it.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much for making time and joining this webinar. Again, please send your questions to the inquiries email address on your screen. And yeah, we look forward to receiving your applications and also engaging with you again next week, Thursday. Thanks, everyone.
And we'll save the presentation onto this chat, so you'll be able to access it there. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, colleagues. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.